Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, welcome. Thank you for spending your Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, wherever you are with us on this platform. Today's session focuses on marriage and one aspect of marriage, which is divorce. Of course, they're intricately related, isn't it? You only divorce from a marriage, you don't divorce from anything else. And marriage happens to be one of the pillars of our society, but one that is not adequately taken care of. Okay? Like every pillar, it is suffering from a plague. There are many storms that are hitting it, and divorce has become very prevalent in our community. We all know someone who has divorced. We all know someone who is actually planning to divorce. And we are products of friends, family members, whoever forming part of that. Growing up in Africa, divorce was something that was maybe very rare. I would say that for most of the time, I think is maybe once or twice in a year you would have heard that somebody has divorced, isn't it? Very rare. But having traveled to the United States, the opposite, isn't it? It becomes something regular. Every other day you get 10 gentlemen together, 8 of them must be complaining about their wives, and get 10 women together, 8 of them will be complaining about their husbands. So divorce is something that we are living with, the reality in our community. It is eating into the fabric of our community, and I think we need to take time to start addressing this. This is not the first time we're going to talk about it. It's not going to be the last time. And this is not the only platform we have dealt with this on different platforms. Recently, within the Cameroonian community in the United States, precisely in the state of Ohio, there was a gentleman who was divorced from his wife and ended up killing her and committing suicide. And that raised the bar within the community. Every platform, every community, every group was talking about it. But beyond these conversations, what do we learn? How do we handle it? And the problem that many people forget is divorce is the end of a process, isn't it? That begins a new process. When people get married, they don't get married in order to get divorced. That's not why people get married. In most instances, except for the obvious case of somebody who is looking for papers and gets married knowing that this one is just for that, isn't it? We're not talking about that. We're looking at a particular instance where people happy. Somebody thinks that they have met their soulmate, their yin and their yang, you call it whatever. And all of a sudden, after they have gotten engaged, living together, married in church, spent a lot of money, invited friends, big party, the real deal begins. And sooner than later, when you're finding out about them, they say, hey, those two are no longer together, they're divorced. And it's always a bitter experience. And so today, I'm not an expert, I'm only a journalist. I happen to have a background in marriage and family counseling because I studied that at the master's level. I also happen to be married, okay, but I also happen to have friends, have people around me, surrounded with divorce stories, divorce problems, and all that. And because I cannot be, the one doing this, I decided to look for an expert. I decided to look for a friend, Gladys Beri. I've known Gladys for a very long time. I knew Gladys in Cameroon, wonderful student, wonderful voice in the choir, active in the community, active within the Catholic community. I knew her when she came to the United States. Now, Beri and I connected for a short while and then she disappeared from the radar. But that's a story for a different day. Until when I was looking for, hey, who can help me, address this issue? And I found out that Beri has been running, a series of programs on relationships. And it struck me that when I went to her page, it says, Beri is a mother, an entrepreneur, and a motivational speaker. And there's a reason why it goes in that order, isn't it? A mother first and foremost, then entrepreneur second, and lastly, a motivational speaker. But she'll tell you herself that she has been through nursing, occupational therapies and all that, different things. But why Beri is on this platform today is she wants to share with us her journey. Part of the business as an entrepreneur, what she's doing is emotional healing, helping people to be able to deal with difficult relationships. How can we discover ourselves? And let me not let the cat out of the bag yet. Very welcome. And I want to thank you for offering to come on to this platform to share your wisdom, to share your experience, and to share your knowledge.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mbom. It is an honor and a pleasure for me to join you and your wonderful audience this morning. That was a very flattering intro, and I look forward to sharing with you what I know. I don't know everything, but what I know so far has been successful and has worked with not just myself, with my clients. So I look forward to sharing. Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that has struck me when I've gone to your page, I've looked at everything, and I told you that I'm going to go all over the map on this. Okay, one of the things that is interesting about you is that you always wear something blue or something purple. What is there a reason to that? Why are you fascinated by this color?
Absolutely. It's a theme that we've tried and tested. And blue is the color of peacefulness, harmony, calming, trusting. If you look at the skies when they're blue, you light up, right? So that's why we went with blue. Prior to blue, we were using purple because it's the color for healing. However, we've tested those two colors and we have decided to stick with the color blue. So everything on the website, everything is going to gradually transition to the color royal blue because that's what is working with the audience.
So again, introduce us to the platform. What do you do? How did you, and maybe after that, come back to how did you get into that?
Sure. So I help lovers heal and strengthen their relationships so that both parties feel empowered with the skills that they need to be able to lead happy, healthy interpersonal relationships. I got into this by I was inspired to get into this from my own failures in my own personal relationships. And I used to be a victim of domestic violence. And I tried to stay strong like many other people, tried to hang in there for the sake of the kids until I hit rock bottom. And in that rock bottom moment, a few questions ran through my mind. Is this really all there is to life? Is this really all there is to my life? Can I afford to continue to live this way? How did I get here? And how can I get out? How can I pull myself back and get myself out of this rut in which I am? So I started looking for answers to those questions. And it is those answers that helped me to transform from being a victim of circumstances to the person I am today. And all the lessons that I learned have become my message, not just to my clients, but to humanity. So a divorce is not necessarily a bad thing that happens to you. I usually use the analogy of, say, a woman who has had a baby in her and she's been pregnant for so many months and she's afraid to go through the labor because it's painful. Well, if you don't go through the labor or the pains of the labor, you're not going to birth the child. And the child that I did birth is the organization that I have formed and my message to humanity and the help that I'm giving to many other people who follow my messages and whom I am opportune to help.
So, what is the name of that organization? And I have a series of questions just in relation to that. Just what is the name of that organization that you?
Healing Family Wounds Organization. Healingfamilywounds.org.
Okay, so a couple of things. You mentioned one, and I heard you at least 6 times talk about I. I did this. I realized I was a victim of domestic violence, and then I asked the question: is this all there is? And how can I? Why are you moving to the I instead of the we? What happened to the? And so again, for the sake of the audience, are you divorced?
Absolutely, I am divorced, happily
Oh,
divorced.
happily divorced. I'm going to come to that. But then let's get back to that journey. Why is it that you are focusing on yourself and not on trying to work things out for your partner? How did it come to it that you are now talking about I?
Right. So you need to identify with your I and strengthen your I so that you can be a strong partner for another I. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely.
So for there to be a healthy relationship, there have to be two healthy partners or whatever number of partners. They have to be healthy versions of themselves first as individuals before they can be partners in a relationship, healthy partners in a relationship. So a lot of times people focus on fixing their marriage, fixing their relationship, fixing this, fixing that. As long as you're looking outside of yourself to fix whatever problems you are facing, you're not going to find the solutions because you're looking for personal solutions from an impersonal perspective. So if you can fix yourself as an individual, you will naturally fix the problems you're experiencing in your marriage. The problems you're experiencing in your relationship are only a reflection of what is going on in the minds of the individuals who are a part of that relationship. So the problem is not your marriage. If you're struggling with marital problems, the problem is not it's not your marriage. If you can fix the I, you'll naturally resolve those problems.
So again, two things. You said you need two healthy people, but I think that in a partnership like this, there's a situation where one person is down and the healthy person is able to bring the unhealthy partner along. Okay, so
Right.
it's not as if both of you start off the journey all feeling healthy, super healthy, and move along. There is a partnership of two unhealthy people who come together and they're moving towards that self fulfillment. And one is help, and we're helping each other. Am I getting it wrong, or
No, you're not. You're just getting it a little incomplete.
okay?
So, and we're talking about emotionally healthy people here, not necessarily physically healthy people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, if two emotionally unhealthy people come together, which usually is what happens in our context, right?
Yeah.
They brew something called codependency. Either they are codependent emotionally, codependent materially, or whatever. So that's an unhealthy situation they're in. So when they go through the process of self-realization and acknowledging that they did not necessarily have the skills to be able to lead a healthy and happy relationship, and they get to that space or that consciousness where they are willing to work on themselves, to improve themselves so that they can have a healthy relationship, that's where you can have two people in a partnership. If those two people in that so-called partnership are not on the same page as far as learning to improve their skills for interpersonal relationships, then you have an entanglement. It is not a partnership, because a partnership is a situation where you have two people with the competency levels that they can both meet up with the skills required to perform, to give, to nurture each other, to give each other, to give love and receive it. So the biggest problem arises when you have that one person who is not in the space of learning, or who is not humble enough to recognize that they do not have the skills. That's called unconscious incompetence. And it is just the first stage of learning, when they are not conscious that they don't know, and then they think they know, but it is everybody else's fault that they don't know, and they think they know. So then they are not willing or able to participate in any learning. So now when you've come to the next stage of learning, which is called conscious incompetence, when they realize that they acknowledge that they do not know.
Let's hang on there with that, okay? Because the competence again, the problem here is when one person starts feeling that they are better off than the other person, okay? Mm-hmm. There are ways in which you communicate that will either bring the other person to a certain realization, isn't it? That, okay, there is something that I need here. I think part of the problem, and I said I was not going to be talking about it. I firmly believe that the problems we have in marriage, the foundation of it is conflict resolution. We have not learned how to resolve conflicts, isn't it? That communication, you will talk about many things. How do I communicate to you that this thing that you are doing is something that is going to ruin our marriage? Isn't it? The way women communicate is different from the way men communicate, isn't it? And how do we learn in order to bring the unhealthy partner, okay, to that level where they can learn?
Right. So each person has to take, thank you for that question. I'll answer it. It was a complex, compound question, and I'll answer it in stages. So that again, you go back to the I. You have to take personal responsibility for how you show up in your relationship. The I. Take personal responsibility for yourself. If you find that you are presenting with difficulties communicating, say, your feelings or whatever is going on, and again, communicating feelings is another skill that a lot of people did not learn, because a lot of times they were taught to suppress their feelings. They were never taught to even acknowledge their feelings. So most of the time you find people living from their neck up. They live in their head. They're not in touch with their feelings. So let alone communicating those feelings effectively without looking like you are weak or there is something wrong with you just for communicating or acknowledging your feelings. Okay, the second part of it is learning communication skills, learning nonviolent communication skills. So a lot of us did not learn healthy communication skills. So that's where we go back again to empowering both partners with the skills that they would use to enable them to show up as the higher value version of themselves, to show up more empowered, to be able to communicate their feelings, to communicate whatever is going on without necessarily hurting the other person. Can I elaborate a little bit more on that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'll give you an example. If you are with your partner and you recognize whatever is going on, which you know is not helpful, it's not nurturing to the relationship, the one thing that I have learned is never to be critical of your partner whenever you're communicating, or even anybody. Never be critical of anybody, because once you're critical of them, then you come across as if you're the superior or you're better, right? Which is the example you used. So never come from a place of criticism towards your partner, because it shuts them down. Nothing else, even if you were right, and people get trapped in being right or being the one that's better, and that mindset, all of that comes from the ego self. So the next thing is approaching your communication from a place of wonder. For example, if a situation came up and you approach your partner, the first way to communicate is, I feel funny in my stomach. I don't know how I feel in my stomach, but I think it's because I am scared that whatever you're doing, we're not going to be able to resolve these issues, and I'm worried about how our relationship can grow from here. So first of all, you communicate your feelings. Just by communicating the feeling that you are scared, it brings your partner's attention. And then your partner relates with you based on those feelings. So the next thing is you say, I wonder if there is something we can do to help change this situation. I wonder, right? So then it helps your partner to open up. I wonder, what can we do? You see how that changes the tone? But if you came across your partner and say, you keep doing this all the time, I have told you this is not going to work, and you keep doing this, and I am not going to be a part of this. Hey, listen, you just shut them down. You blamed them. You criticized them. They shut down, and they won't open up for any reason. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So again, we are dealing with hypothetical situations, because generally when these things happen, people are already angry. We have talked about this over and over. I don't see anything changing. I don't think that this is something that is going to work, isn't it? So again, within those tense moments, when people are already in a situation where, they are not just scared, they have beyond the fear. They are now saying that this is not working for me. I don't think that this was meant for me. And that it has already blocked them from any step forward. How do you break down that lock jam, call it? How do you bring the other person to be able to say, okay, in spite of this, what can we do?
Right. So you can remember that you cannot force anybody to do what they're not ready or willing to do. We were born as individuals, and we are responsible to ourselves for the experiences we want to have during our lifetimes. A person who hasn't come to that place of self-realization, there is nothing you are going to force them to do to get to know themselves beyond their physical selves. A lot of times, we were not even taught that there is more to us than our physical selves. So, and a person begins to learn when they get to that point where they realize that their ego is not serving them. Their mind alone is not serving them. So then they begin to get to that point again of wonder. I wonder what else is there to me. And there are relationships, if you go deeper into relationships, there are relationships that are like karmic relationships where you learn lessons and there is a time for that relationship to begin, the time for it to end. You cannot force it beyond that. If not, again, you get back to that place of entanglement. You cannot force a person who is not willing to go beyond their ego to learn, because they are trapped in the ego consciousness. Does that make any sense?
Great. I mean, again, these are very interesting facts, but I really want to ask that, entanglement, did you just discover that this person is this entangled? Did you just discover that this person is this maybe unhealthy? Did you just find that out? Because I think that getting married is not something that happens overnight. You just met Gladys. Oh, Gladys, I'm so interested. 2 days later, we are married, isn't it? There's something that has gone on. And I'm not saying that everything is going to be revealed within a particular period. But before you get even to making that commitment, there are things that you have identified and say, hey, these things, I'm ready to go with this. These ones, I'll see how it works. So how do you get to that point of entanglement when you're already married?
Right. Your subconscious mind knows your truth. Your heart knows the truth. But at the time you meet somebody and you're influenced by euphoria, your euphoric hormone keeps firing and they make you feel good. They make you feel like, oh, this is what I wanted all my life. And yes, so you make decisions and choices based on euphoria. And once the euphoria has died down, then you begin to face the reality of what your subconscious mind had warned you about, which you decided to ignore at the time because you were caught up again in the ego of the euphoria. Right? So as time goes by, the euphoria fades out and you start facing the reality and you start facing your truths, right? That is where you work on yourself and encourage your partner to work on themselves as individuals so that you can form that healthy, happy partnership. Right? So, but if one person is doing the work on themselves, trying to improve themselves so that they can be a better, healthier version of themselves in the relationship, and the other person is not doing the same work, that creates an imbalance. And wherever there is an imbalance, there is no growth, there is no harmony. Does that make sense?
Right. So again, you see, I'm stuck with one thing here. I'm stuck on that point of I. Because the way I look at marriage is such that it's not as if the we suddenly collapses everything about the I, isn't it? But for me, I believe that we are supposed to be holding each other's hand and moving along. Then it comes a point where, hey, you leave your hand and you're talking about I'm feeling like, hey, I'm the better person, or this person is just, it can't. I don't think that it is all about that euphoria. And just before I get to this, I want to welcome those who are watching on, and there's a question for you. Vincent, Chair in Canada. So what part does love play in such an unhealthy or healthy relationships, isn't it? Where is the love?
All right. So we need to first of all go back and redefine what love is, right? Love is not euphoria. The excitement and the high that you feel when you meet somebody and your chemicals go, that's not love. Love is simple. Love is kind. Love is humble. So let's define the characteristics of love. Love is sharing, giving, and receiving, right? That is love. Simple acts of genuine acts of kindness for which you are not expecting something in return. That is love. And it begins with you. It begins with you making sure that you do those acts of kindness towards yourself first, so then you can share them. The being humble with yourself first, so that you can share that humility with your partner. So everything else that we have learned about love, especially from romantic movies and all of that, that is not love. That's not real. So then people come into a marriage with the expectation that it is going to be romantic all along. It is going to be where they are draining of one person all the entire time, and they don't come with the attitude of, I am here to give and to receive. And what are you giving, right? So it is a complex issue because many people misunderstood or were not taught exactly what love is. And I'll give you an example. If you watch a genuine act of kindness being performed to somebody, it inspires you to be good, to do more of that, right?
I'm with you.
Yeah. I'm sorry, what did you say?
Yes, I'm with you. You're right.
Yes.
Absolutely. So
yes.
the one act generates.
Right. It inspires for a reason. Inspire, break that word down. In spirit. It is in the spirit of love. It is not in ego. Right? So you have to shift from ego consciousness to be able to get to that point where you are humble, because love is humble. So if you have two people, again, going back to where you were saying one person feels they're better, one person feels yes, that's coming from a place of low self-esteem, not humility, right? Where one person is projecting on another person how they feel about their ego. Does that make any sense?
Yes, but again, it does. But Gladys, you see, I'm pushing back on this ego, I, and all that, because it seems as if it only becomes possible. The relationship only becomes possible if my ego is crushed and I'm able to celebrate your ego. Okay?
Can I quickly respond to that before you move on to another thing? Yes, for there to be true love cannot come from a place of ego. Both partners have to humble themselves to their true essence. True love cannot coexist with ego consciousness. So any relationship you've been participating in where it is all ego, that is not love, that is entanglement.
So maybe let's focus on the ego part. How does that show up?
Ego shows up as you, or anybody identifying only with them, with their status, the story of who their physical body is. That's ego consciousness. They're trapped in their mind only. When you go beyond your ego and recognize that, first, you're not just your physical body, you're not just your physical story, your earthly story, you are a spirit with a programmable mind, right? With your body. Your body is just the vessel that is physically manifested on this earth plane, the 3D realm. Your body is just that vessel, and you are a spirit. And what is your spirit? Spirit consciousness. Then you go beyond your ego, because suddenly whatever story you have been identifying yourself with, it doesn't matter anymore. You're coming from that in spirit, inspired, conscious self. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does. So, but again, it's a process, isn't it? It is a process.
If you choose to make it, it's a process. If you choose to make it longer, it's going to be longer. If you choose to say, I have just been trapped in my mind the whole time. I have been trying to satisfy my ego. And I realize that no matter what I do, I am not as happy as I think I should be. What can I do to help myself? And for example, if you're listening to something like this and they say, there is more to you than your physical body, and you just go and start researching it. Really? There is more to me? There's more to me than my ego? Yeah. Research it and you say, I just want to be more conscious of my spirit, my inspired self. That's the higher self, your higher level self, right? I want to be more conscious of my inspired self, my spirit self. Who am I? What am I here for? What am I here to do? What is my purpose on this earth? Right? So then you begin to get to know yourself better, to understand yourself better. And if all of us can get to the point where we're questioning ourselves, questioning our beliefs, questioning our ego, going beyond our ego consciousness, we get to the point where we are inspired. And a person who is inspired does not have does not come across as I'm better than you are. Does that make sense?
Right. So I see that you have, laid out. I'm getting interested in that word inspired and more, because I'm learning something that it means to be in spirit, isn't it? Yeah. Now, let's take 2 steps back. We started off talking about the problems that marriages have, okay, is because of that ego consciousness, okay? And that manifests itself in different forms. You could have people who are two unhealthy people who get together and they're not able to get to the point where they can agree that let's hold our hands even in our infirmities and move forward. Beyond this ego consciousness, what are some of the other things, some of the other problems that people face in marriages?
Every problem, name any problem and you'll identify it with the ego. Name any problem that comes in your mind.
People who are drunk every day.
Right. A person who is drunk every day has a spirit of alcohol in him. Are they inspired? Are they living from their higher self?
Again, there are many things that come into play. Okay, I just use that as a random example. Somebody the person is not coming home early because he's trying to avoid a problem at home, isn't it?
Right.
Does not want to come home and start quarreling. And because of that, decides to go look for a place where he can be drinking and getting drunk and coming home. That means amplifying the problem. Am I right? So again, how that relates to ego, maybe yes, the self, isn't it? I'm thinking about myself. I don't want to, but it is in order to avoid problems.
Right. So the example you have used is perfect because it demonstrates a perfect example of somebody who's experiencing their problems at home and chooses to use alcohol as a means to avoid looking into themselves to find solutions, to find real solutions to their problems. Remember, a partner you pick for marriage a partner you pick to marry is a mirror reflecting to you the things that you may need to work on in yourself so that you can grow to that higher level of consciousness to be the person that is inspiring, not just to your partner, but to your kids and to your community. Does that make sense? Your partner is a mirror to you. So,
can you just on that part, can you explain more about what you mean when you say your partner is a mirror?
Okay.
You mean that when I look at my wife, I see myself?
Thank you. When you look at the problems you're facing with your wife, it's a reflection back to you. What do you need to work on to be a better version, a healthier version of yourself? So pull up any problem you're having with your wife and then look at yourself. They're just reflecting back to you. Everything that you ever ignored about yourself, everything you ever rejected about yourself, everything that you ever discounted about yourself. Sometimes a partner is reflecting back to you that what you already knew but rejected, that you are meant for better. You are meant to do better. You are meant to be better. But you chose to settle for mediocrity. So look at every problem you're facing with your partner and you will find the solution right inside you. The solution to your problems is not outside you. It's not in alcohol. It's not in working. You use the example of alcohol. Other people, a lot of us, use work to cover up or make up for whatever problems we have at home. And until we learn to look inside ourselves, we're not going to find those solutions.
So your image of the other person being a mirror is interesting for the simple reason that what if the other person is actually not a good mirror? What if the other person is the problem, isn't it? You are already, you are on a different pedestal, and you realize that the other person is not even matching up with it. I'm just using your analogy. How would that person be the mirror then?
Right. The person is reflecting to you, hey, you're better than this. And that is where divorce is not. So then you divorce from everything that has held you back from being the higher value version, the inspired version of yourself. Because you made that choice at that time because you were discounting yourself. You were rejecting yourself. You knew very well on a subconscious level that you were settling for mediocrity. But because your mind, your ego wanted to satisfy, oh, I have to be married. Oh, I have to be identified with this person. Oh, I have to be identified like this. You settled for it. And as time goes on, your higher self is catching up with you. Your wiser self is catching up with you. So, and that's one mistake that many people make. They make choices based on euphoria and decide that these choices are going to be for better, for worse, till death do us part. So if they're reflecting to you, oh, you made a mistake. So then you say, oh, I had made this mistake and I will die with this mistake. No, you come to an agreement and say, oh, how can we work together to be our best versions of ourselves? Or if they're not ready to work with you, because everybody has their soul journey, independent from the other person. If they're not ready to work with you, you cannot be working, then they'll be dragging you behind. So getting away from that person, again, divorcing from that person, is not just divorcing from them physically, it's divorcing from every situation that made you settle for mediocrity.
So, Beri, again, I'm playing devil's advocate here, and I want to inject something into the conversation because of my background, and I should technically not do that. I'm a Catholic, and I believe in the phenomenon of the cross, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I was taught that I should be able to carry my cross. If I've made this mistake, and this is the way to sainthood for me, I have to carry this cross along and move on. And my faith teaches me that, hey, once you are married, you should not be divorced, isn't it? Carry that along.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I just have to laugh. Okay, thank you for bringing that up, because a lot of your audience is trapped in that mindset. Why were you born? Were you born to carry a cross all your life? You're Catholic. The Catholic or the Bible teaches that Christ came so that you might have life and have it in abundance. To carry a cross and continue to carry a cross, even after Christ died, so that even after Christ came and carried that cross for you and died so that you may have life in abundance, that is insulting to Christ. That is insulting to the cross. So go back and think for yourself. If God manifested his own son and sacrificed to carry that cross, and you decide that you want to continue to carry the cross,
so Beri, there again, for all this again, we could get down into the theology of this to say that when you say Christ carried the cross, does that mean that because he carried the cross, we should no longer have crosses? We definitely have to take, he himself says it, take your cross every day and follow me. That does not mean that you do not have that cross. I'm saying, and maybe I'm putting it in a Catholic fashion, but what I'm really going at is, there are things that you have to bear in a marriage, no matter what, okay? There are things that you have to bear because there are two people, different people who have come together, different backgrounds, okay? Different expectations in life, and all they are doing is trying to corral these energies to a place where they can get that self-fulfillment. It cannot be the case that because I am feeling this and this, I should just toss it out in order to be, Christ has carried the cross, so I should not. No, there must be a way in which I should be able to carry that. The question will be, how much of that carrying am I able to sustain? But it cannot just be, hey, just toss that away.
Okay, thank you again. Your understanding of the cross and me and my understanding might not be the same. My understanding of the cross is your life purpose. Okay, serve your life purpose, and Christ, once you engage in service to your life purpose, that's my understanding of the cross. Okay, you're not here, that's one limiting belief that a lot of us have. You're not here to suffer. That's not why you were created. You were not created to suffer. God created everything in abundance for you to live a fulfilled life. You cannot live a fulfilled life from a place of victimhood. You cannot live a fulfilled life from a place of suffering. So again, go back to where I mentioned coming from a place of ego, being in a place of inspiration. When you have gotten out of that place of ego and you question yourself, you question your beliefs. Who am I? What am I here for? Once you discover what you are here for, that is your life purpose. Once you're implementing your life purpose, that is what Christ means. Christ came on earth to die for you. That's a cat or Christian version, right? That was his purpose. Now, what is your own purpose for coming to this earth? Right? Until you find an answer to that, you will continue to suffer in ego consciousness.
So, Beri, this is a conversation we are having, okay? Mm-hmm. Let me use your example because, again, these things, life purpose, they are fanciful terms. I grew up wanting to be a priest, isn't it? I spent 7 years in the seminary, isn't it? Then all of a sudden I'm out of the seminary, and then I get married and discover that my life purpose was to become a priest. I now have a wife. I cannot go back to the priesthood because they will not accept me. I'm married and I have kids.
Good.
And my wife is looking at me and saying that the seminary is where you belong. So what do I do?
Okay, thank you very much. Being the marriage, that the physical marriage you're talking about, it is a man-made organization, just the same as priesthood is a man-made organization. You're identifying being a priest with serving your life purpose. And I want to tell you right now, maybe even being a priest would still not satisfy that life purpose you were placed on earth to do. You shared with me a few days ago that, okay, first of all, tell me, why did you get back into journalism?
No, so for me, I've always been a journalist, isn't it? I've been doing things but when we came to COVID, isn't it? COVID-19 provided an opportunity to say, hey, while away this time and run some of this kind of programs, isn't it? That's all. For me, it was more getting to work. And
Good. Thank you very much. You gave me exactly what I needed. Your higher self, your higher consciousness self, you're defaulting to your higher consciousness self, your inspired self, because there is a message that you, Lambert, have to deliver to humanity. And being a journalist is a platform that you are using. You did not need to be a priest to do journalism. You are gravitating towards what your spirit is calling you to do, what you were placed on earth to do, not to be a priest. I wanted to be a reverend sister. Can you imagine me being a reverend sister?
You would have made the best reverend sister ever.
No, because within the context of the religious man-made institutions, I will not be able to be the free thinker I am, the thought leader I am, because I have my ideas that are not going to be consistent with the religious institutions that they want. So, but then my life purpose is to help people to heal their relationships and strengthen themselves. I did not need to be a reverend sister to do that. I did not need to be a religious person to do that. Does that make any sense?
So, Beri, a couple of things, okay? I realize that you don't like me because at the end of the day, you are pushing me to go and do journalism that has no money in it.
Okay, that's what you're thinking. Hold on.
You want me to
wait. No. That you're hold on right there. You bring many things to light, okay? And I don't mean to cut you, all right? But I want to respond to that right there so that when you bring the other thing, I don't forget. You say I'm pushing you to journalism where there is no money, okay? It is a fundamental problem with us coming from back home. We were taught or raised to follow instructions, go get jobs and all that. We were not taught to think. So now what you need to do is, if you truly identify that you were born, you were placed on this earth to build a platform where people come to nurture themselves, to improve themselves, to become higher value versions of themselves, you were placed with a message that humanity needs to hear to promote themselves. Now you ask yourself, the God in me, the spirit that I am, teach me how to monetize this. God will not send you to come and do work for which you would not be rewarded in abundance. So now it is your job to go and learn what you need to do to monetize your platform, set up the systems so that when the people you serve come to you, they reward you abundantly for the service you are doing to humanity.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, I'll think about that, but I know that my point was about life's purpose. And again, there are many comments coming up, and I just want to welcome everybody who is on. Jane Shitty, my sister, welcome. She says the I factor is very important. A stronger I makes for a better us.
Thank you.
Joseph, I keep enjoying every single word used. Vincent again says that's right, Lambert. Adija, welcome. Father Diodone Som, Amatoge, welcome. Jude Agua Ozugen, your guest strikes a familiar chord. How we communicate our issues in marriage is critical in sustaining the spark in a marriage. When you present a problem with your wife or husband from the place of curiosity rather than blame, you elicit empathy and emotional connectedness, needing in keeping that spark that initially ignited the marriage afloat. Such a disposition establishes that you are a team and is different from what sounds like a pattern of negotiating, which is a turn-off, isn't it? But again,
wait, so you realize I'm not the only one, right?
no, definitely. You definitely you have a school of thought to which many people are going to believe in. No doubt about that.
Right.
Now, Father, and I meant to say this too. I'll come to it. You said marriage, the priesthood, the human institutions. They are not. They are divine institutions. Okay, we can talk about that later.
Yeah, hold that thought. Let me respond to that.
Let me go through the comments. I'll let you come to it. Father says anything that affects a human relationship hurts. A marriage is based on an internal prompting called love. True love starts from the ego. Love your neighbor as yourself. Very important. And I was going to come to that. And then goes beyond the ego. In marriage, this going across or embracing of the other is a wonderful and mysterious fusing of two egos to become one flesh. Okay? Two egos to become one flesh. The depth of the human person is found in their sexuality, which is something we're going to talk about today. That is why it hurts deeply when one feels betrayed in a relationship, in a marriage. Marriage which is rooted in the sexuality of their being. There could be room for mending the hurt, but when there is no effort made, the fear is that one person gets pushed to the wall and we get to where we are. Meanwhile, we never intended getting there in the first place. I think the point Father is making here is about the ego. And this is something that I think you and I talked about in the back maybe last week. The Christian understanding of marriage, isn't it? Is love. Love of self. That is the point. Love your neighbor as yourself. I must love myself first to be able to love the other person. So that ego consciousness that you keep talking about, that one should forget. What I'm taking away from that is, it is that ego, that inflated ego that comes about with pride, isn't it? It's not the ego that says, I think I need to improve on myself so that the other person can enjoy the best version of myself, or to use your term, a higher value version of myself. But there's nothing wrong with the ego. I'm hoping you're not saying that I must kill my ego in order for a relationship to succeed.
No, you use your ego subservient to your higher self. If you live your life based on your ego alone, that's where you have problems, because your ego is most definitely wounded and ignorant of your higher value self. So your ego is used subservient to your higher self. That's my point. And what you are doing, that is, again, let's go back to the definition or the reality of what true love is. True love is not subservient to the ego. What if in your ego consciousness, you do not like yourself? Can you be able to love yourself?
So again, that is fundamental.
Wait. In your ego consciousness, if you do not like yourself, can you come from a place of loving yourself when you don't like yourself?
So the presumption there is that ego is self, that love of self is a healthy love of self, isn't it?
Right.
That's a presumption.
Yes, which means your ego needs to be in a healthy place.
Correct.
However, the ego is the wounded self. Your higher conscious self, your spirit self, your inspired self is the self that goes beyond flesh and mind. That is your spirit self. That is your soul.
There's a dualism there that you are trying to create, which for the sake of this conversation, I really don't want to evoke that, isn't it? That thing, the spiritual, the soul, and the ego and all that. But I think where we are going to is simple. All of us come to any relationship with egos. We have that. But what is the state of that ego? Is it a healthy ego? Is it a bruised ego? And I think the reason, and I often say my realization is that, and I said this morning to Brother Divine Chamuko when he responded to this, and I said, I think the problems that most marriages face is because of clarifying or the lack of the clarification of expectations, isn't it? And when we start off the journey, we don't identify where we are and where we are going. We all just say, hey, we're good to go, and we start going. Each person has a different expectation, and like you said at the beginning, we are not communicating the expectation, and then those expectations are not being met, and you are there bruising and cursing until you break down. And when you break down, you start saying, after 10 years, this is not where I wanted to be. This is not the person. But again, starting point, that ego, the clarification of those things, and all together, okay, building up each other so that the relationship lasts.
Thank you, Mr. Mom. I really, really appreciate you for bringing this up. Okay. I wanted us to have short questions so we could identify issues and handle them, because you brought up a ton in your statement, and I need to respond to them gradually. Let's start with the expectations. Expectations come from the ego self. If you find that you're not able to meet with your partner's expectations, you're working in your ego consciousness. And if we get to that point, okay, you're working in ego consciousness. When you get to your higher self, your spirit self, your inspired self, you're not, and that is where true love actually comes in. Because you get to that level where you are a servant. You are approaching your relationship and your marriage as a servant. Both of you are servants to each other. The spirit, servant's leadership goes beyond ego consciousness. To be able to get to that point, again, with your expectations, meet your personal expectations first by yourself, so that you're not looking at your partner to meet your expectations, because the expectations of the ego are insatiable. That's what, wait.
Okay.
Yes. So when you get to that consciousness of going to your higher self, you perform genuine acts of kindness, not because you have expectations for that person to return them, but it's because it is who you are. Imagine if you and your spouse or your partner performed genuine acts of kindness to yourself first and to your partner, because it is just who you are. It is your higher self, your inspired self acting at that time. It completely eradicates the idea of expectations, because you are coming from a place of genuine love. Remember, expectations come from codependency. That is a very unhealthy place to be at. But when you get to the point where you look at yourself as a servant leader, servant leaders use their ego to be subservient to their purpose on earth. Does that make sense?
No, and this is what I was getting to. because again you come forth with something. It's as if I just come in myself. I should not have any expectations, isn't it? There are things, the journey to self-discovery, the journey to that fulfillment means that there are things that I expect in a relationship, isn't it? And when we talk about expectations here, maybe we need to clarify that, because for some people, expectations may be that the other person is going to be working and then I'm sitting and they are making the money and bringing it, isn't it? It may be that I'm unable to work.
Yeah, which is codependency.
Yes, exactly. But again, that is the reason for the relationship. That codependency, isn't it? You depend on me, I depend on you, so that together we move on.
Okay, hold on. Let me respond to that. No, wait. You bring up so many things. Let me respond to that. There is interdependence. There is interdependence, and there is codependence. Interdependence is the healthy part. Codependence is the unhealthy part. So it's good.
What's the difference?
You are working on becoming your higher value, your inspired self, the servant leader in you. Your partner is working on becoming their higher self and the servant leader in them. We are social beings. The purpose of coming together in union is to grow together, to become better versions of ourselves together. So for one person to expect that another person is going to do all their work and just show up and they don't do anything, that is an unhealthy pattern of codependency. Two people who are healthy, supporting each other, are interdependent. That's why we are social beings. So it's important to understand the healthy versions of ourselves and the unhealthy versions of ourselves. And unfortunately, we have only been modeled unhealthy versions or unhealthy patterns of the social constructs.
So, I mean, I'll take it because the distinction is not clear to me. But again, interdependence. Let's go with that. And Jane.
Okay, hold on. If it's not clear, let me. Okay.
Jane says expectations is the problem. It is important to meet your expectations first and stop expecting others to meet up to your expectations.
Right.
As partners, we should always serve each other and the results will speak for themselves. And it's simple. What is that service? What is it you are calling service? Again, I asked you to talk about expectations. What are these expectations?
You brought the idea of expectations, and I would like for you to list any the biggest expectation people bring is that my partner is going to love me. My partner is responsible for loving me and making me feel good, right? Mm-hmm. That is an unhealthy pattern that is projected by people who suffer from this one thing called I don't like myself, I reject myself, I don't really know who I am. I don't even know what I'm here for. People with low self-esteem. So they are expecting their partner to love them. If you do not love yourself and you're expecting somebody else to love you, that's the greatest act of selfishness. Because there is no way a person can continue to love you when you do not accept yourself. People want others to accept them when they do not accept themselves. So again, it is the journey back to the self, back to the healthier, inspired version of the self. And as long as you continue, go back to the ego of the person who is expecting to be loved when they do not love themselves. That comes from a person with a wounded ego. And until you solve the problems of that woundedness, you're unable to have a reciprocal relationship with that person. You're able to, go ahead.
That's a very good point. But the thing, again, going back to what we said in the beginning, if the other person does not even love themselves and they are projecting that, looking out, okay, you having noticed that, how do you help the other person? There's no possibility of you helping the other person to discover that this expectation is unhealthy in the first place. And secondly, you actually need to work on yourself, isn't it? You actually need to work on yourself in order to come up to a level where we can now reciprocate.
Right. Thank you. And that is where I come in with healing. I help lovers to heal and strengthen their relationship by empowering both partners with the skills to lead healthy, happy, interpersonal relationships. Every word in that statement is purposeful. It's meant to be there. When you can help, so being aware that you have a problem is the first stage. Getting to the next stage where you are open and willing to finding a solution is the next stage. Finding the solutions is the next stage. Applying those solutions is the next stage. So if you have a partner to whose attention you have brought, we have this problem because I take personal responsibility for my side, and I wonder what could happen if you could take personal responsibility for your side. Can we get the help so that we can learn the skills we need to be able to pull off a happy, healthy relationship? If that person is not in the space where they are willing to acknowledge that they have a problem, it becomes unhealthy for you to stay in that relationship because they will continue to drain you. The worst thing that could happen to anyone. Have you ever read the research on the biggest regrets people had when they were dying?
No.
Okay, I'm going to share with you that the biggest determinant of your happiness in your life is the quality of your relationship, your intimate relationship. It determines how happy you're going to end up. It determines whatever is meaningful to you in your life. So to take your life where you're trying to move forward and your partner isn't interested in becoming the higher value version of themselves so that you can build something magical and impact the world together, will you be serving your life purpose by staying in such an unhealthy, toxic relationship? No, because you are modeling. Remember, there are kids involved. You are modeling to kids that it's okay to settle for mediocrity, to settle for a life of illness. Remember, when the ego is bruised, it is usually bruised from trauma. There is primary trauma, complex trauma. A person who sits with a person and continues to exchange the energy of the traumatized person, you become sick yourself. It's just like sitting around with somebody who smokes and you inhale their secondary smoke. You become sick as well. So it is important for us to have these conversations and be honest with ourselves. It is the I, the healthy I, that should be that is in a partnership. If you continue to settle for something that you know that you were meant to be better, you were meant to grow, you were meant to improve yourself to become better, and you settle for that mediocrity, you settle for that sadness, that unhappiness, and you hand it down to the children, and the children continue that pattern of dysfunction. What are we doing to our children? What are we doing to our society? So you have to ask yourself those questions and be honest with yourself.
So again, in my role, I have to push back because again, it's kind of, when you start talking about, you introduce interesting concept there about kids, isn't it? Yeah. The children play an important part in this. And you say you don't want to teach your kids to settle for mediocrity, okay? And therefore, you have to pack your things and leave. And remember too that most of the societal problems that we have, maybe most is not the right word, many of the problems we have are coming from children from such broken homes. So you have right there kind of, I don't want to say a paradox. You are caught in between two situations where staying there models a wrong behavior for the children, taking them out models another wrong behavior for the kids. So in between that, what would you do?
Thank you very much. There is a difference between a dysfunctional home and a broken home. Okay? To subject your children to a toxic relationship, again, is trauma you are creating to the ego of those children. So those children will grow up with a bruised ego again and recycle that problem. For you to be the higher version of yourself, the inspired version of yourself, you don't need to be married to do that. You need to be a high functioning version of yourself to model a high functioning version, a healthy version. You need the structure for your kids. When there is two high functioning, two inspiring parents in the home, that is the best case scenario we want for kids. There is nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with educating your kids that these are mistakes I have made. And this is how we are going to correct these mistakes. It is a painful process, but if we support each other, we will get through this and we will be better. That is a different conversation. But to get together with a partner or say in an entanglement or continue to live in a dysfunctional relationship because you don't want the kids to grow up in a broken home. Hello, you're modeling more brokenness to the children. You are bruising the kids more. You are destroying the kids' ability to even learn what a healthy relationship should be so that when they grow up, they can model. Okay, for example, imagine a person who is living in a toxic relationship, right? And they subject their kids to that toxicity, which is unhealthy, and which is, again, one of the reasons why bullying in schools is so rampant, because the kids are exposed to toxic parents at home. But imagine your child 10 to 20 years from now struggling with the same problems that you are struggling with as their parent. Will you be happy and proud that your child is having those same problems? Or would you be happy and proud that you saw this problem from the beginning and you took steps to make sure that your child did not suffer with the same problems you're having? Because dysfunctional families, dysfunctional homes are the very fabric of dysfunctional communities.
So I am sure that you have read the research about the impact of divorce on kids. And I don't know the research about dysfunctional homes, okay? All I'm trying to say here is, while I hear what you're saying, I'm also saying equally that just as you don't want to model the dysfunctional home, so too, a broken home. I mean, take it out, a single mother. There are many people many good people, kids who have been brought up by single mothers, isn't it? The general pattern is single parents, okay? It depends on, I mean, most of them are always women. They never talk about single men, okay?
Yes.
Again, all I'm saying, you need to strike that balance. There is a certain level of, I mean, yes, in a home that is that toxic, you said you suffered some form of domestic violence, isn't it? Nobody wants to be subjected to that with kids, seeing their mother being beaten up, and they themselves are wondering whether after they finish beating their mother, they will turn to them and they themselves are beaten, isn't it? Yet, at the same time, within that home where you are building it, many single women, I mean, somebody recounted a nasty experience to me yesterday. It's not something worth sharing. But it was just the fact that the woman was a single mother and she had about 3 or 4 kids, okay, young kids. And men used to come around. And because the men came around, she grabbed, one day, one of the sons, a man came around, and I think the child, they said, was about 3 years old, grabbed the private part of the man. And that scandalized the mom. But what was the problem? The child was modeling the behavior of the mother, because the child had seen the mother constantly do that.
Okay.
That was the turning point for the woman. She was sharing this to tell me that this is what took me out from what I had been doing. And from that day, I stopped first making sure that no man came to my house for anything. And secondly, I had now to introduce my kids to say, listen, This is not a way of life. Do not try to say that because mom was doing it, therefore I'm going to do it. So all I'm saying is, in every situation, there are going to be ups and downs, isn't it?
Right.
I'm not saying that there are no, I mean, I'm not in any position to talk about divorce. Okay? At
Right.
least I profess my Catholic faith already, and everybody knows that. Okay? But I'm saying within the context of this conversation, where we strike a middle ground is important. I don't know whether there can be any middle ground. Because
Right.
the things that you complain of in a dysfunctional home and a broken home too, isn't
Right.
it?
So to be in a dysfunctional home and to be divorced, they all have the same patterns, right?
Mm-hmm.
The point is, after your divorce or while you were in a dysfunctional home, did you go through a process to improve yourself, right? Which goes back again to going to that process of self-realization, going to the process of becoming your higher version of yourself, because that's the inspired self. Guess what? The inspired self is a self-disciplined self, right? The inspired self comes from a place, again, of servant leadership. Leadership. Remember that word, leadership. We're all leaders raising leaders. To stay in a dysfunctional home means you are not being your higher self, which is being the servant leader. Many of us do not even see ourselves as leaders, let alone servant leaders. And your ego, again, is subservient to your purpose as a servant leader. So that is why many people will repeat divorces, go through one relationship and the other, and still not be happy. The fact that you went through a divorce does not mean you're going to find happiness if you cannot tune in to that higher self, to find peace within yourself, to let go of all expectations because they are not serving you, to meet your own expectations of yourself, to tune in to that love within you, to tune in to heal that ego, that bruised ego within you, so that you can come from a place where you are ready and willing to give and receive. Does that
So,
make sense?
Barry, I mean, let's take the second part and just focus on your journey, okay? I like for you to model for us. I mean, I'm not sure we have talked about how long you were married, how many, I know you have two beautiful daughters, at least I saw them on your Facebook page. But when you came to that point that you had to move away, how did that happen? And when you moved away, what did you do? To get you to the point where you can talk about it without feeling, call it distress in a certain sense.
Right. Thank you for that question. Yes. And I share my story just to inspire other people to know that they don't have to identify with their victim story. So I wouldn't say it was simple, but I came to the place where I would say, if you choose to make it simple, it's going to be. You choose to make it difficult and long process, it's going to be. I asked myself one very important question: how did I get here? And how can I pull myself out and become the higher value version of me? Right? So I had to go through a process of healing the wounds, the deep, deep wounds that had been holding me back. Because again, you come to a place of that self-love. If I love myself, will I subject myself to anything that's toxic? I won't, right? If I truly love myself, can I take care of myself? What can I do to take care of myself as an act of love for myself? What can I do to be kind, genuinely kind to myself? How can I forgive myself for everything that I have put myself through? How can I forgive the other person for acting in the ways they did? Remember when I said your partner is a mirror to you?
Right.
A toxic partner is a mirror, mirroring to you that you've been rejecting yourself, you've been discounting yourself, that you are hating yourself. Because when you truly love yourself, you cannot subject yourself to all of that. And then understanding who is the I. Who am I? What is the meaning of my life? What is the purpose of my life? When you find answers to those questions, it changes the trajectory of your life. How can I submit myself to my life purpose? What is the message in my mess? How can I use these messages? How can I use these lessons to help to improve humanity? How can I become the servant leader, not only in my life, in my family, for my kids, but to humanity?
But
right?
it's. I mean, you make it sound so simple. Okay. I mean, it seems as if one would now just have to go back and start doing more introspection, or like my teacher used to say, you gotta see the women around bell towers and weep with them, isn't it? That is not normal within our community, isn't it? When I have
What?
issues, I say
Say
it's not
it again.
normal
You gotta CWA women and do what?
and weep around the bell tower, isn't it? You just cry, self pity, that kind of stuff.
No. See, it is the difference is coming from a place of victimhood to coming to a place of enlightenment.
Yeah, but Barry, that's rare. That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying that it is rare, isn't it?
Why is it rare?
Most of us prefer the victimhood condition, isn't it? I want to stay there because
Good. You prefer victimhood. Why? Because you're trapped in a pattern of codependency.
no, what I mean by victimhood in this sense now is I rather want to be showing myself as being the victim, isn't it? I want to go to people to feel it's
To
not
feel
that.
pity for
Yeah,
you.
exactly, right.
Right. And that
Yeah,
is why they will continue to repeat those patterns until another life. They are just trapped in a pattern of victimhood, right? And that is where, because they are trapped in the pattern of victimhood, they have expectations of others. And that is why having expectations of others when you cannot meet the expectations yourself is the greatest act of selfishness. That is why victimhood is selfishness, because you're expecting other people to do things for you that, one, you will not do for yourself. Secondly, you will not do or reciprocate to another person. And it is important that we call it out for what it is. Be honest with yourself. You mentioned, go back, reflect over yourself. Why am I in this situation? Because coming out of victimhood now requires for you to take personal responsibility to meet your own expectations. Be they loving yourself, be they providing for yourself, be they providing for your kids. It requires for everybody to have the self-discipline to meet up with their own expectations so that they can be the higher value of the version of themselves, so that they can come across as the servant leader and go beyond the ego, which is wounded and has expectations that can never be met.
So again, we have come back to the thing about expectations. Just for the sake of while, let me play something for you here once. This whole thing about expectations is very important, okay? And I think that you mentioned it. There's something here that some other person has said, but I'll come to it. Barry,
Yes, sir.
there are people. I mean, people who have money, rich people who are divorced. People who are poor and they are divorced. And
Yes.
you're wondering, what is it? And for me, this conversation pulls out that the problem is not whether you have money or you don't have money, Because again, when we talk about these expectations, you are thinking that the other person is expecting you to provide money or to provide, yes, some people do
Love
that.
and acceptance.
So
It's about love and acceptance. It's about, so if you have the wounded ego that does not like yourself, no matter how much money you have, I have seen very, very rich people who have a wounded ego. They only identify themselves with their ego, but that ego is wounded. So deep inside them, you have a child, a little child who either was abandoned and is struggling with self-rejection because they did not have the nurturing, the love that they needed when they were little children. And so they have grown with this ego. And no matter how successful you become in life, you still do not like yourself. You still do not, you have self-rejection issues. You have low self-esteem issues. And then you got married because you thought your partner was going to love you or accept you the way you are. But again, you keep projecting your low self-esteem, your self-rejection issues onto your partner. And it's very difficult to love a person who does not love themselves. So that's why, again, we have to go back to that ego that is wounded and heal first. Heal, and then empower them with the skills they need to be healthy in a relationship.
So maybe my diagnosis of why people, you keep going back to the ego. Can you just tell us, based on your clients and all that, what are some of the issues that many of our families are facing that will eventually get to that? Well, I know we have talked about the ego thing, isn't it? That is key. Okay. What are some of those things that people should be looking out for? And yes, the other person is a mirror. I may not have good eyes to see the mirror in the other person, isn't it? That the other person is actually a mirror. What are those things that people should be looking out for in their marriages in order to help them discover that, hey, you may actually be the problem, you need help, and this is how you can find help?
All right. So first of all, I will redirect that to say you're not looking for anything in your marriage. You're looking for something in yourself. For example, again, the problems you're facing in your marriage are a physical reflection of the problems you're ignoring within yourself. So if communication has been a problem in your marriage, you ask yourself, am I communicating? First of all, am I even listening to myself? Am I talking with myself? Am I having conversations with myself? And how do I talk to myself? Believe it or not, we have conversations in ourselves all the time. You always have a conversation going on in your mind. But the problem is the conversations you're having in your mind is called negative self-talk. That negative self-talk is there because there is, again, a wounded ego that says, I don't like myself. I am so stupid. I am so dumb. I am this. I am that. And then you project it on your partner and you blame your partner for whatever thing, right? You come across as a critic. Every time you go from self-criticism, you project it onto your partner as criticizing them for everything. The biggest problem that people going through a divorce always complain about is the criticisms that their partner was laying out on them. It is a reflection of how they are criticizing or critics of themselves, but projecting on their partner, right? So you look at it as the mirror. What is it about myself that I am criticizing about myself? If your partner is not loving you, what is it about myself that I am not loving about myself? If your partner is rejecting you, what is it about myself that I am rejecting about myself? And that is the journey to self-love. When you can embrace yourself, even with your wounds. They again go back. In every situation that I have come across, there is a wounded child in that person. And when you can help them to embrace themselves unconditionally, despite my wounds, I embrace myself unconditionally. I love myself unconditionally. Opening up to yourself and embracing yourself and loving yourself unconditionally opens you up to true love. And when you come from a place of true love, then you can give and receive. You can share and you can be nurturing. Many children, many people who are now adults in relationships did not get the nurturing they needed because they were said, Boys should not show emotion. Boys do not cry. Boys are strong and powerful and masculine and all that. Should be a healthy balance. Boys have emotions. When you bruise the emotions of a child, as young as they are, when children are born, their brain begins to develop from their feelings first. Before they can even communicate, their feelings are developing in their brains already. And just by ignoring a child or not attending to them, not nurturing them, you're beginning to bruise their ego, because they make up their mind and say, oh, I'm not important. If I was important, maybe they will respond to me. Or raising a child and telling them they have to do this, and this to be good enough for them to be loved. So then you're withholding love from them because they have to meet certain expectations before they can be loved. That is not divine love. Divine love is unconditional love, unconditionally accepting, unconditionally embracing, not embracing your mediocrity or anything else, but embracing yourself as you are, and then working to get to the point beyond the ego where you identify yourself as the spirit of whatever gifts you have been given to bring to humanity. And when you can perform genuine acts of kindness to humanity, that is divine love. Does that make sense?
You are blowing my mind out with this, and I think that it makes a lot of sense. I can see before now, my friend's wife, Adija, kids are better off coming from a broken home than living in a broken home. Jane Shitty says bingo, but I want to play something for you just so that you can catch your breath, because
we're proud of who we are. They're the one gonna say we're proud of who we are. Hello to all my friends from Bansa. Mutuno digu Bansu.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Gladys Beri, entrepreneur, mother, and what else? Motivational speaker, relationship expert. We have been talking about marriages and divorce, and now I really want us to drill down to a couple of things. We talked about money, and I know that you have been going around talking about the bruised ego, higher version of self. Okay, there's one thing that we have really not gone to, and I find that is a problem, and that's sex.
Sure.
Yeah, I know that it is a taboo topic, but I think that it's something that we have not addressed. I mean, I don't know about others, but I can talk for myself. I think amongst us men, we have really not taken time to see what it takes in order to make sure that your marriage survives. Not, again, I've gone beyond the ego thing. I'm trying to see what role will sex play in marriage in order to enhance it, to prevent it from getting to that point of divorce.
Finally, you came to it. I love talking about sex. Thank you for asking that. Okay. Your sexual experience goes beyond your physical performance. First of all, remember that a person who is struggling with adverse childhood experiences, such as having experienced or witnessed domestic violence, has trauma inbuilt in them. A person who, whatever childhood experiences that you can come up with, abuse, neglect, whatever happened that bruised them, and they are carrying those wounds. The energy of those wounds reside in our sexual organs. That's the first chakra in the energy body. For you to be able to...
Sorry to cut you. So trauma rests in our sexual organs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Keep on. I'm listening.
That is why when you find a person who still has that trauma in them, who has not processed that energy of all the trauma, they usually are struggling with issues of sexual dysfunction. It is not a problem of sexual performance, even though sexual dysfunction and sexual performance would go together. The point is to take your sexual experience from a physical experience to an ecstatic experience where your souls merge together, where you become in union with divinity, where it is that sacred experience where you give and receive a different kind of exchange of love, ecstasy, spirituality, and oneness with the Creator, where you go beyond the physical. And that is what people are looking for, because a sexual encounter that is only identifying with the physical self is very limiting. It's meaningless. That's why you can have as much sex as you want, but you still don't feel satisfied. You can pay prostitutes for as much sex as you want, but you still feel the emptiness in you. But when you go beyond the ego and identify and have that spiritual soul connection with your partner, you learn how to get to that point of ecstasy in a deep, full spiritual ritual between the two of you that elevates and nurtures your body, your soul, your spirit. Sex is nurturing. Sex is healing. You heard of that song, sexual healing, right? Sex is healing. If your experience is that sex is not healing and nurturing to you, there are wounds. There is the ego that is interfering in that process. Does that make any sense?
So, I mean, yes, I mean, it should. But again, for me, the problem here is you find, I mean, like I said, I've been in marriage counseling, marriage therapy. That's what I studied before doing journalism. But one of the things you keep hearing is, he cannot satisfy me in bed, okay? And that becomes a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And you're wondering, the man needs to go and seek some help. But again, the man's ego is going to prevent him based on, how do I go telling another person that this is a problem and all that?
Right. Okay. I don't mean to cut you, because you bring many things that need to be addressed before we get lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to where he can't satisfy me in bed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could it be that you need to look at it as a mirror to find where individually you're not satisfying, like you don't have a satisfying relationship with your sexuality, and you had the expectation that your partner had to satisfy you in bed, even though you do not have a relationship with your sexuality. You have wounds with energy around your sexuality. Say, for example, sex is painful, and it's because you're holding on to this energy and onto these wounds that would make sex, even just holding on to the knowledge that sex is sinful, or holding on to the knowledge that sex is a bad thing. Is it possible that this man is just reflecting to you that you have personal issues you need to address with yourself? Because no matter how many men have sex with you, you still will not be satisfied, because deep inside you, you're rejecting your sexuality. You're rejecting having a healthy sexual experience with yourself. You're rejecting seeing yourself as the sexual goddess you are. Is it possible? And when you can heal that and embrace it, it is energy. Sex is energy. It is the energy you bring to your sexuality that determines the quality of your experience with your husband, right? Then look at the husband as well. It is the energy he brings. It is not about how physically strong he is to pound her until it just hurts, right? So a lot of us were not taught that our sexuality is beautiful. We were not taught how to express our sexuality. So we have shame around it. And anything that you have shame around, it's unhealthy. So to create the space where as a man and as a woman, you can begin to embrace your sexuality, embrace yourself unconditionally. There is a lot of trauma that's associated with us. And it is that trauma that is the bruised ego again. Okay.
So you are getting, I don't know, people in the audience are not agreeing with me, but I don't know why they're agreeing with you. So,
okay, hold on. You have brought this point several times. And I am hoping that this is a platform where we can educate each other. I did not come here to agree with you. My ideas are totally ideas that we were not raised with. And remember, you come from a background of theology. Theology and truth are two different things. Your experience of theology is your truth, but it's only one side of the story. Okay.
I like to just again push back to that. Do you know that it doesn't matter to me whether you agree with me or don't agree? It doesn't really matter. That for me is just a throwback line for me. And I'll tell you this, and you'll be surprised that the person who is agreeing with you is a priest. Father Dufe says, I accept with you, Glad, that the trauma resides in the sexual organ. But I must indicate that the most important sexual organ is up there in the brain and not down there as many people think. The wound, the trauma is in the brain. And you really articulate this so well. From the damage in the brain, the tendency becomes that of defending one's entire world. So an earlier damaged sexual life is dangerous for further sexual experiences in marriage.
Right. Good. So let me respond to that really quick. There are three aspects of you, right? Three. You have your body, your physical body, which is the sexual organs. You have your mind, and you have the spirit. You are a spirit. Your spirit, your soul, whatever you call it. You need to integrate those three to be whole. Does that make sense?
Right. So
if you only identify with the mind, which is the bruised ego, the mind and the body need to be in harmony. The spirit, the mind, and the body need to be in harmony for you to experience the kind of sexual, the kind of nurturing sexual experiences that you're looking for. So you have to bring these three together. And that is where I say your physical body is the vessel that your mind and your spirit are using. So if you're living only in the mind, living only in your ego, which is bruised, your physical body is dysfunctional. But when you use your ego to be subservient to your spiritual self, your higher self, now you have the three components of yourself in harmony. And when you bring the energy of harmony to your sexuality, then you can experience the nurturing that you're looking for.
So I think that, you seem to agree with Father in the sense that it is that integration that is important, isn't it? It's not just, and that is a big problem, for most people, it doesn't transcend the physical, okay? And even beyond the physical, even when you identify that as a physical problem, you are not seeing the emotional part. You are not seeing the trauma even from the point of view of how that has affected your whole worldview, your psychology. But Gladys, think about it. We say size matters, isn't it? and then somebody is not able to have orgasm, and you are telling the person that the problem is integration of physical, emotional. I mean, what would you advise a couple going through that kind of, call it that kind of experience? What would you advise them to do?
First of all, there is a lot of emotional healing that needs to take place. You cannot, no matter, you can use one that is as large as my arm, and it will only hurt you more. If you have, yes, size matters. We can work around that. But if you have trauma and energy of the trauma that is residing in your sexual organs, there is no way you will go beyond that. We can, we can work on healing that trauma and repairing the relationship between you and your past, so that you let go, you release all of the trauma that's residing in your sexual organs, that's living in in survival mode, living in in victim consciousness. When you're in victim consciousness, you cannot reach the place of orgasm, because for you to get to a place of orgasm, you need to have a relaxed mind. You need to relax your emotions. You need to be whole, to feel your body, to feel your spirit, to feel your energy consciously and relax. You need to listen to this word. You need to get to a place of surrender. Okay?
What does that mean?
Surrender. You need to get to a place where you surrender all the stressors, all the trauma, all the pain. You surrender and you let go. And you just surrender and you are present, fully present with your spouse in an exchange, in a dynamic exchange, a beautiful dance where your partner can show their divine masculinity, which is the forward, and you as the feminine, you can be and enjoy your divine femininity, right? Because a lot of people are living in masculine energy, whether they are female or not. And somehow the word empowerment to some women meant they had to become masculine versions of themselves. Well, there has to be a fine balance if you are the masculine and you are the feminine. So if you take a masculine man and a feminine woman, a divine masculine is different from the toxic masculinity. A masculine who is well balanced, and you allow him to have the energy and to bring forth, because masculine energy is piercing, it is fast, it is furious. You allow him to be in his divinity as a masculine, and you are receptive. You have to be open to receiving as a feminine, which means you will surrender to his masculinity, so that he can bring you to that point where you have surrendered all your stress, you've surrendered all your expectations, you surrendered all the pain, you surrendered everything, and you're just standing there in humility and willing to accept to be served by your divine masculine. Does that make any sense?
Even though you talked about the kind of dichotomy between theology and truth, I want to tell you that what you said coheres with some doctrine of the church, which says the man, that divine masculinity, the man gives in a receiving way, and the woman receives in a given way. Okay. And the problem, again, because you touched on this and we're talking about divorce, part of the issue is when you find a reversal of roles, that kind of competition between the man and the wife, and again, even though we have skirted around it, you find issues of that reversal where the woman makes more money than the man, and that becomes a problem, isn't it? Back to the bruised ego thing, isn't it? That plays out in every aspect, sex, communication, and all that, and run into tremendous problems which could have been resolved if people were able to identify with their bruised egos and get to a healthy position where whatever who is making is not what is count, because everybody is contributing, isn't it? We are contributing, and we are not thinking about it in terms of, hey, I am the man and I am supposed to do this, and you are the woman and you are supposed to do this, okay? But we all are, use your term, interdependent, because we are moving towards something.
I think I got to you finally today.
I'm not sure about that. Yes. So again, let's take the last couple of minutes, because I think 11 minutes. Let's talk about this healing process. You described a journey. You first of all have to identify that there's a problem. You accept that there is a problem, but that's not it. When you accept that there's a problem, then you look for the solution. And even when you get the solution, then you have to apply. So for the sake of those who are listening, how do they get to you so that you can guide them through this process? And what does it take for somebody to come to you? I did not pay anything to get to Beri, so people know, because journalists. So that is why I am able to get her for free. Okay, because if she had asked me to pay anything, I would not be able to pay that. But then, for the sake of the work that you do, what does it entail and how does that work?
All right. So thank you for asking that question. Yes, and yeah, I do not work for free. And however, my coming to this platform is a part of the service to humanity, where you have to have that fine balance between what you do for free and then the intensive work that you do, which is paid service. So I have a Facebook page called Healing Family Wounds. So you can like our page, and I usually upload content, video content. There is a ton of videos on there, which are free resources for you to begin to enlighten yourself. And then our website is healingfamilywounds.org. On our website, you also have some free content. And then if you make a donation on the website, it automatically gives you access to some content also, like the emotional healing e-course, self-awareness e-course, and all of that. However, on the website, you can also fill an application form and give me a little bit of details, and one of my people will look through it, and then we can get back to you on that. Due to COVID, we have suspended activities such as our workshops and retreats because of COVID-19. However, we do private coaching, private retreats, but those don't come cheap because they are very intensive. So we're looking forward to being able to do our relationship workshops, where you come, you learn more about whatever you're presenting with, and then we will also go into the retreats, the group retreats. It's better because then we can serve a group of people all at once. The prevalence of the problem we're trying to solve is so great that we cannot afford to do private retreats for everybody who is coming, because the need is so great. So it's important. We're really, really looking forward to get to the place where we can begin to gather groups of people to do 3-day retreats, where we will do the healing, learn a lot, deeper levels of learning about healing our wounds in our relationships, like making our marriages or relationships the center for healing in our homes. Because again, like I said, the need is so great. Communities are just so dysfunctional, and I sit and I'm wondering every day, how can I support humanity to get to this point where we are in harmony with ourselves, in harmony in our marriages. So healingfamilywounds.org, and then our Facebook page is Healing Family Wounds.
So the question that I have avoided, but which I have to pose to you, is why would I come to somebody who is divorced to come and find out how to be healed so that I don't get divorced? I mean, you announced that you were happily divorced, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes.
Why should I come and also be, I mean, maybe you are looking for people to be happily divorced. Is that what you are?
No, my life journey is personal. I am single out of personal preference. So to be divorced is not to be just a physical experience where you're divorced from somebody. You're divorced from all those aspects of your life that held you back in mediocrity. And life is a dynamic process. That I am divorced today, right now, doesn't mean I'll be divorced tomorrow. Or that I am divorced doesn't mean I don't have a healthy relationship with somebody, or I'm not sharing a healthy relationship with somebody. Besides, a healthy marriage depends on your healthy skills, the skills that you need to be able to lead a healthy relationship. So it's not about my marital status. I can choose to be single for the rest of my life. It doesn't necessarily mean I don't have healthy relationships, or a healthy relationship, or I don't have somebody that I share a healthy connection with. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So, yes. So learning, it is about the skills. It's about what you want. And it's a limiting belief to think that a person who should teach you about marriage should be married. No, it takes a level of vibrational energy to fall truly in love. To fall in love truly, you need to be vibrating with somebody at a certain energetic level. To have a healthy relationship with that person, you need to have certain skills that I have, which if you are having those problems, you do not have. So it is about what is it that I can help you with, what problem I can solve for you. It's not about my marital status, or any. My marital status has absolutely nothing to do with my skills and my ability to help you to solve the problems that are keeping you awake at night and lonely in your heart.
So, to couples that will be watching or that are watching and have problems, what can you tell them?
Yes. So again, like we said, recognizing that you have a problem, and then are you willing to find solutions to the problem? Are you willing to look inside yourself to find those solutions? I am only a tool. I am a vessel. I'm not a tool. I'm a vessel that carries the message of how you can heal. Are you going to experience this healing? Is your partner willing to hold your hand, to put their ego in subservience to becoming the servant leader? And if not, you just have to go deep within yourself to recognize yourself, to embrace yourself, to embrace your truth. Your heart knows its truth. Heart intelligence, it knows its truth. Once you are in alignment with your truth, there is nothing else that matters. So it's, again, just go within yourself. What is your truth? Can you embrace your truth? Because even if you come to me and you're not willing and ready to embrace your truth, let's not waste each other's time. Remember, I'm expensive at private level. So when you're ready to embrace yourself, I am the vessel that you will use unconditionally. I won't judge. I don't judge you. I am only a vessel. Chances are, where you are, I was there and I did figure my way out. There are proven strategies. Go onto the Facebook page. There is a ton of content, Begin to reflect on yourself. Tune inward. The truth lies within you. And when you are ready for implementation, I am here to support you unconditionally, as long as the money is paid.
So again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you for watching. We've been listening, we've been watching and conversing with Gladys Beri. She runs an organization called Healing Family Wounds. You can find the organization on Facebook, or you can Google their website, www.healingfamilywounds.org. It has been an electrifying conversation. For me, it's been a starter. I've learned a lot. And I'm sure that Gladys will be coming back, because I'm sure I'm going to be inviting you when I get more questions and get time. Any last words?
Thank you, Mr. Lambert or Mr. Mbom, for having me. It is my pleasure. I am really honored, and humbled to be in this position of service to humanity. I love you all out there. Love yourselves, embrace yourselves. No shame, no guilt. We are better together. Thank you.
So again, we know that marriage is challenging. Marriage is challenging, it's tough, it's a garden. I often ask myself and I tell my friends, consider marriage as a job, a full-time job. And if you have a full-time job, ask yourself how much time you actually spend to do the work. And we have learned today that the work is on the self. If you are going through a divorce, you can call Gladys to help you through. If you have gone through a divorce, even better, for healing, so that you can prepare yourself in order not to repeat the mistakes. And for the rest of us still trudging on in marriage, let's continue to discover ourselves and seek the fulfillment. Thank you all. Have a wonderful time. I'll see you all on Tuesday. Tuesday, we'll have another show, and this time around, we'll be talking to women who are doing the 25 push-ups for 25 days in order to raise awareness for mental health. 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you all.